What's good, everybody? We are back. It is your boy Jarod and your girl Gabby, episode 67 of the Kicks and Shit Show. Bam, 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 bam.
Ooh, that was like
That is a little. I had like a little rotating.
what's the opposite of crescendo?
I don't.
Descendo? I don't know. I don't get the real word.
It's like, what is the opposite of crescendo? I don't know. But anyway, Gabby, what is going on in those sunny streets?
I know, Jarod. I mean, it's the time of year where, like, I can't believe it's not even 7 o'clock yet. The sun is setting on a wonderful summer. Every time I hear "ba ba ba ba," I now think of you. So,
look at
when
that.
I was online at Flight Club over the weekend, yeah, your girl was out in the sneaker streets.
They shot the air horn at you out of Flight Club?
No, we just were towards the front of the line, and then I was like, "You guys, you're almost there!" Ba, 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 ba. And I was like, "Wait, beats in the streets."
Do the people online appreciate your air horn?
They absolutely appreciated it. They were here for it. It was funny because they were like in line to get in the store, which I don't know. My sneakers got to be so trendy, you know. I mean, a line on a Sunday night at Flight Club.
Well, especially Flight Club.
Nothing has launched. Like.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, it moved very quickly. It was very well organized. Shouts to Flight Club. But like, I'm like, you should not be in there. No, I'm not a haterade judger like that. At least not out loud. But
you were quietly judging some folks.
But yeah, the people that were leaving that were behind us in line. They were like gonna leave. They were like, "Oh, we're online." I'm like, "We're literally like 3 people from the front of the line, and their Uber or someone else got in their Uber, so they came back." And I was like, "Welcome back!" Bah, 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 bah. It was really exciting. And I was like, the girl had like the Louis that I'm trying to cop.
Okay.
It looked like they were like for the culture, so I was here for that.
All right. Let's look at you out there doing our first sort of test at feats in the streets.
Yeah, it was very interesting though. I mean, we always love a white glove experience. White Club had a plastic glove experience.
But didn't want anybody's oils messing up the sneakers, hand oils.
I mean, I had clean hands, but I do appreciate that. I also it's very interesting now that sneaker culture has become so much more mainstream and so much more trendy. You know how I feel about sometimes the perception that I get from people who don't know me if I'm rocking a pair of ones and just like walking around in the universe, right? So I was like, can I try on a pair of shoes? And the girl looks at me like, I'm like, I'm not going to ask you for the Travis Scott ones. I'm not going to put on like the pair of like Royal Satins or the Original Breads or the Trophy Rooms.
Right,
like,
you're asking for like a generic pair.
Right. I'm like, can I try on a pair that's similar to what I'm wearing? Like a reasonably priced sneaker.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, it was nice being back in a store, I will say.
How were they in terms of the overall COVID protocol? Was it like letting
They were on point.
Okay.
They were on point. It was everybody mask up.
Cool.
Gloves for everything that you touched. Everything was plastic wrapped. You got a quick temperature check upon going in.
Okay. All right.
And the line was there, I think, mostly to regulate the amount of people that were in the space. Yep. I appreciated that. I mean, overall, it was a great experience. I still think, and I love Flight Club. I love going to see sneakers in real life, too, because I don't think photos of kicks always translate, right? True. That's what sometimes is the risk that we take if we're buying sneakers online, right?
Especially when you're looking at color, right? Because the color sometimes doesn't quite, you're like,
I mean, the rabbit leather is a prime example of that. Yes. Where every picture, it looked like it was a different color. And sometimes you just kind of have to roll the dice, go for a pair of kicks, and hope for the best. Or if you think you might like them, even if you're not sure, you just got to make a play for them. It was nice to see some of the kicks that I was looking at. I'm like working on my list.
Okay, all right.
I will say the resale on some of them is still a little higher than what I would like.
Pay.
Which pair I'm specifically talking about. I'm trying to not mention them again on this episode.
All good. We know.
Yep. I'm running with the ocean.
We get it. We get it.
But what's going on in the streets for you, Jarod?
Well, nothing quite as exciting as long lines at Flight Club. But I am like you. Lamenting is maybe too strong a word, but sort of, anticipating the end of summer and the change into the fall season. I'm not anti-fall. Like I actually quite enjoy fall, and I enjoy the winter. I talked to you about my favorite 6 weeks of the calendar year are actually from my birthday through New Year's Eve, right? Like those 6 weeks, which happen to be end of November through end of December. So I like that time of year. And I generally like the fall. It's more, as it's a change, right? And generally speaking, as humans, we don't really love change, right? It's not our jam, right? So it's, it's, even though it's not happening anytime soon, it's the idea of, beach, that's really not going to be done, right? Not going to be doing, unless you get on a plane and fly to some exotic place, which, given the, the current state of the world, probably not going to be happening this winter. So I've been thinking about that a little bit, but not all terrible news. Also good things happening, right? NBA training camps start next month. Crazy. Football season, college football's already begun. NFL starts very soon, next week. It's busy times out here. So from that standpoint, exciting. Also, in the world of popular culture, and this will take us into our discussion about some things I've seen out in the news and in the culture, or in popular culture. I'm going to say the culture, in popular culture. Very different thing. So, Sunday morning, the long-awaited Kanye West 10th studio album, Donda, released. after three listening parties, 2 in Atlanta, 1 in Chicago.
Him living in a stadium, catching on fire, having the Kardashian clan in their full outfits that match him multiple times. I mean, is this just a press scam, or do you think this is really part of the creative process? Well, because with Kanye, you never know.
And that's funny, because that's what I want to talk about, right? Like, anything with him, I think, is always so complex and complicated, right? Because I think he is a complex individual, like, just from the standpoint of any of these artists, creative types are like that, right? And we've heard him say this before, he views himself as among, if not just of this era, the most influential people of all time, right? And so if we're being honest, the receipts kind of back it up, right? It's not, I mean, yes, he is boasting about it, but the receipts suggest that, right? Like, he's an extremely influential figure in popular culture, right? Obviously, we know what he's done in music, not just his own work, but we know the production work he's done for numerous other artists. Obviously his work in sneakers and fashion, of course. Like, he sees himself on that very highly elevated level. So yes, I've said this for a long time. I would say once we got past the trilogies, the college trilogy, and we headed towards 808s and Heartbreaks, once we got to around that point, I feel like he was becoming full-on performance art. And, and it might have even been a little bit before that. Probably the Glow in the Dark tour. He might have even started with like, all right, I'm going full-on performance art now.
I totally agree with you. That was like the first time I actually got to see Kanye live was the Glow in the Dark tour. Amazing tour. He came out an hour late. And at a certain point when you're at MSG, if you go past the time of the last train, everybody's making OT. OT. You know what I mean? And so, but I will say the way that he took the stage and was out there by himself and had this whole, like, literally like a performance stage, like a set to a play, to a show built. I mean, I thought it was really unique and beautiful. And there's not many people that can pull that off. And I'm not saying he's out here about to win like an Oscar for his acting skills, but it really was like a performance art piece instead of just being a good performer. Like I've seen people like a Justin Timberlake, don't judge me.
No, it's fine.
That are or a Beyonce that are known for their performance, but there's a difference between that and a true performance artist. Yeah. Right. Where it's like almost like that abstract. Like I feel like if Kanye, they had videos of his shows 50 years from now at the Whitney Museum.
That would not surprise you. You'd be like,
not even a little bit, right? Because it's that type of, it's almost like he's an installation and he's a part of that.
Well said. Like, he's an installation. I like what you did there. No, and so that's kind of how I see it. Now, of course he's controversial. There's the red MAGA hat, there's all the things, right? But strictly in terms of the work that he produces, again, I am in the camp of he is one of the most influential artists, like not just of this generation, but again, I think history will suggest like, oh, this guy, what he does with genre bending sampling and the way he mixes tonalities and sounds, like it's really interesting stuff. Now, music has this thing, as you know, is subjective, right? It just is. Something that sounds good to your ear may not sound good to my ear and someone else and whatever, right? And is what it is. But I really enjoy looking at the work he does from a critical perspective, because I'm like, while this is not, in my mind, as good a representation of where he is in his life as, say, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy was, at that time.
Yeah.
This Donda piece is representative of where he is in his life, right? It starts sort of very declarative and very clear that some decisions have been made, but it ends kind of in a very messy, like sort of undeclared state, right? With those part twos at the end, and it's 27 songs long. And so a lot of things that kind of make people automatically like, I want no part of this. Get me away, get me away. But there are things on there that I'm like, oh, this sounds good. And so anyway, I just think anything that he does is always interesting. And I think, like any sort of real true artist that's looking to push boundaries, like that's where it's going to go, right? And I think that's the challenge with music, because music is art, right? And for so many people, it's like, I used to have, I had someone in my life who used to say, when I go to a show, I want to hear the music the way it sounds on the album, right? Like, that's how they want. Right?
I mean,
no, but and I'm not judging, but that's how some people want it, right? Like, how it was produced on the album, that's how they want to hear it when they go to the show.
Of course, that's what they're expecting,
right? But there are people who don't. A lot of artists who really are about the performance, and really true musicians don't often play it that way, right? Like, they will ad-lib, they will freestyle, they will, if it's a band, they may go on a jam a little bit longer in a certain section, whatever it may be. And so for me, I enjoy that piece of it where it's like, ooh, what are we getting? Like, and it may not sound good, and that's fine. I might be like, all right, but I'm not going to be like, oh my God, it's trash. And anytime things like this come out and it's someone like Kanye that's polarizing, the internet goes crazy, right? And it's like, everyone's really to decide, is this a classic? Is it I'm like, the album's been out for less than 24 hours.
I was going to say, meanwhile, I'm like, Donda estás, the album. You should listen to it first, everybody, and then we'll decide.
Right? People out here trying to make like grand claims, but that's also the internet and social media era that we live in. It's like, guys, let some shit breathe for a while. It's okay to not have a thought about it for 6 months. Or it's okay to not have a thought period about it. That's also fine.
But I think to your point, right? Like, some of the best music, some of the best TV shows, movies, it's how they age. It's not just how they are upon release, right? Like, I know obviously, like, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, for example, one of the greatest albums of all time, in my opinion. I think, like, there was like doo-wop, the poppy songs, but then there was like so much more to unpack that, like, the more you listen to it, and like, that's still something I'll put on today.
Sure.
Right? It's just, it's held the test of time. I think, there's always like the poppy songs that are going to be the releases, the first single, but usually what's really good and the real meat of an album is everything else. So
no doubt.
I'm curious, to your point, like, how it's going to marinate. Let it sit in the fridge for a few days.
Exactly.
Get the sauce into the meat. Then let's revisit it.
And it's okay to not have a thought about it. Like, it's really cool. You don't need to run on the internet and be like, I didn't waste my time with that trash. It's like, it's cool, guys.
I think that's true about most things.
Right. You're right. Like,
that everybody runs the internet. Like, I know if there's something I want to watch, where do I not run to?
The internet.
The internet.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yes, I'm with you. Like, if there's a movie I want to see or whatever, I avoid all criticism about it or whatever. And when I say criticism, I don't mean the internet. I mean actual scholarly criticism. Yeah, I don't pay attention.
Twitter from your phone.
No. And then I watch it myself and I make my own. And then that's what you can do, folks. You can watch, listen, consume for yourself and make your own informed opinion. It's not that difficult. Anyway, and the final thing I'll say is that to me, the way I look at, and this is his 10th studio album, I look at it as the albums to me it's an arc, right? And it's an arc of his life. Like, that's each album is representative of a portion in his life. And I think this album is representative of where he is. Now you can say, well, he's not in a great place. So, well, that could be very well true.
Have a great album.
Right. Exactly. And you could also make that correlation and say, this is not good. Right. And that's reflective of that. But that's how I view it. Right. It's representative of where he's in his life. So anyway, that's the Kanye West piece. Sticking in the sort of Kanye West family, or
Are we gonna head north or east?
I see what you did there. This is more like adjacent.
Okay.
Something I know, this is back to our ballywick, right, which is sneaker and different clothing lines and releases and stuff like that. Have you, and I know you have, been paying attention to the Ivy Park releases for Adidas? And I find it so fascinating because every time it pops up on my Adidas thing, it's like, oh, like, but it's not like.
I never get those alerts though. So whatever you're doing, I mean, you're more of a man of the ladies than I am, apparently, because I never get these alerts.
Well, luckily for Ivy Park, they do also make things for men, but most of the things are it's a predominantly women line, or they'll have unisex things. I think it's interesting because Beyonce, like, remember when the first like a release, right? Those huge big boxes got sent to like, I mean, I wouldn't even say they were influencers. I mean, okay, yes, they are influencers in the sense that they're people who are popular that people will follow, but they're not like, Jimmy influencer down the street. It's like fucking Reese Witherspoon and like, celebrities.
Right, yeah.
Right?
I mean,
like,
it's funny. I was actually working at the PR firm at the time that was doing the Ivy Park launch. Okay. And a lot of that was around celebrity. And I think the way that, Instagram and social media has changed for me is that if you want to maybe have like a news piece about it, celebrities help.
Yes. Correct.
But when it comes to actually buying and talking about it, like the true engagement doesn't come from the celebrity. Right. It comes from people that are styling it, using it in their everyday life. Even if it's not a full fit, if it's like a piece here and there. I mean, full fits are also great, head to toe. We don't like to mix all of our brands, but yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting the way that the line has transformed because of that.
Yeah, yeah. And what I find interesting is like, so the latest one was like her rodeo collection, right? And I'm pulling it up on my phone, and there are pieces that are still available. And quite a lot, to be quite honest with you. And I wonder, on the one hand, it's quote unquote bad for Adidas because there's, you're doing these releases and there's a lot of the items are available, but good, right? I think for people who want to consume it. I mean, it's not for me, but, people who are out there, because what is the thing we always talk about? Oh, these coveted releases come out. There's like 5 items and then we can't get them and whatever. I kind of like the fact that if you are, because, Beyonce has her stable of devoted fans, right? And so,
yeah, the Beehive,
of course. And so they want to buy anything that she does, right? And so it's nice that there's an opportunity for them, that it exists. They're not getting shut up.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I do think, though, like the way that I look at the Ivy Park line in the beginning, because it was limited edition, right? Of course, it's going to sell off the shelves. But because now it's a staple line, like it's in a way that like not everything from Jordan sells out right away. Not everything from Katie sells out right away. It has now become more of a staple than it is like a limited collab drop. To me, I don't look at that as a collab. I look at it as a new extension of the brand. Like how I can go to the store and buy like Jordan brand t-shirts and other things like that. So for me, the expectation isn't for it to necessarily sell out. I love how they're playful and creative. And to your point, I like that people can actually get it. I think, the things that sit also these days are very interesting to me, right? It's like, depending on which way the hype culture goes, like a Jordan, especially if it's a popular silhouette, is going to go right away. I'm worried that Fragment is going to oversaturate with things because they've been doing a lot lately. I mean, that was what was so great about the Fragment ones that came out years ago, is that it was hard to get them. They came in limited sizes. They didn't even come in my sizes unless it was like a friends and family pair that I was able to get my hands on, which I was not. But, I think the more and more this stuff becomes common, like, I don't want Sakai even the Sakai's to be another colorway. Did I make a play for them? Absolutely. Did I take it out? Also, absolutely. But it's to the point where, like, I don't feel like I'm heartbroken over not getting the Off-White Dunks, for example. I saw them all over my feed. I had no FOMO. You know what I mean? And I think that, like, that's not always a bad thing as well. I do want to clarify that, where I like that. I mean, Yeezy was formed, so eventually everyone could have a pair, right? I know some pairs were released more than others, but you see them all over the place. And I think, that's the way that, to me, something like an Ivy Park is, right? Like the Uni Ambush clothing, a lot of times like that doesn't sell out right away, or like Melody Asani or, Alayli May. The shoes sell out, but not always all the clothing that comes along with it. And I think that's true with a lot of different collabs, except for maybe Travis Scott. They also do such a limited run. They're not always available in certain places, but I like that it's accessible. I think, that's part of the culture that's great, is that it is inclusive, and there's so few opportunities where things are as inclusive these days because there's so much hype and so much mainstream support behind it. I like that it's available, that you can still get that and rock it.
No, I think you're dead on with that. And our friend Mike Sykes, who is the author of the Kicks You Wear newsletter, talked about this in a recent newsletter, the one that came out today, actually. There is this, because we talk about the psychology of it all the time, right? This idea of, oh my God, a drop comes, and there's a drop every week, right? So, and often multiple per week. And it's this constant psychology of like, and we know it's limited amounts that get drops. So you feel like you're like this hamster on the wheel, right? And you're chasing,
Absolutely a hamster on the wheel,
which
yeah.
you never, I mean, I guess if you're super, super lucky, sometimes you get. Most times you never hit, right? I would say it's 99.9% of the time you miss. That 0.0001 you hit, right? So that's once every, I don't know, 5 years or whatever the number is, depending on how often you do it. But when the stuff sits, it allows you to have to regain a little more sense of control and power over, okay, what do I want to actually get into here, right? And that's kind of nice, again, for the consumer, right? I mean, look, we all know economics, you know how supply and demand works, right? That's how they keep you part of the hype train. But when stuff is on the shelves, you can be like, oh, all right, let me go look through this stuff. And then it's like, hey, I actually like this, right? Versus, did I really like the thing before? Or was it just hype that I was feeding into? Right? Like, and I think oftentimes for a lot of people, I don't know if they're able to differentiate between the two.
I think most people aren't. And I think, that's what's so interesting right now about sneaker culture is because so many brands and so many retailers also back a lot of resellers. Mm-hmm. So that's where like the cogs on the wheel aren't going back the other way, not anytime soon. This is like the new normal. I think that's what makes things so fascinating, right? But like, I now see tons of Air Force One drops. I see every girl. I feel like the white Air Force One low with a little bit of that platform sole has replaced the Fila disruptors of 2018, 2019, right? That's like the vanilla milkshake of sneakers right now, or if you know what I'm saying, which is why I own 0 of those pairs. But I think it's interesting seeing like things are everywhere. There's so many colorways. At a certain point, just like let people have it, right? Like I wish it wasn't. No, and I don't even mean the hype releases. I mean the regular. And I think that's where like to me, and I know we've talked about this silhouette before. The Air Jordan 1 is so fascinating to me in a mid because the colorways are fire. They're churning them out all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to get them, but like to me, that's a great point of entry if you want to play in sneakers. And some of the colorways are better than some of the high tops, and especially like for women that are looking for something a little bit more petite, it's really great. And so I like to see that Jordan is getting flexible with that, right? They're like, they understand the nuances of the hype versus not. And I wish they did a release with ones maybe around holiday where, that 11s, the 11 holiday pair usually is a little bit easier to get. They usually do a larger release. I would love to see them do it with maybe not necessarily a bread or a Chicago, but like, something that is like a holiday release, even if it's all red with like a black swoosh, like in the way that they did the 11s years ago. I'd be very interested in seeing how that does, just because there's larger quantities. If the hype culture is really going to gravitate to it, I think because it's a one, absolutely. But it would be interesting to see in the coming like months and years if Jordan Brand does kind of play around with some of those classic silhouettes a little bit more. Like Dunks used to not be able to get them. Now there's almost so many releases, and to your point, like you can get 0.01% of them, but you're seeing a lot of Dunks out in the world now.
You are
before, especially the lows.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is we talk about these collaborations and drops and extensions of lines, like you're thinking like with Ivy Park, like. I think the other part of it is we have to remember, as you often point out, Gabby, we are like immersed in it, right? There are people who buy sneakers and clothing who do not follow on social and know this drop release is coming out. This like the majority of the people who buy sneakers do not buy it in the way that we look at it for these releases, right? They just go to the store or go online and go, oh, that looks nice. I'm going to buy that. It's nice to have something like those Ivy Parks or whatever available on the shelf or on the virtual shelf online to be like, oh, I never even heard of this. I didn't know what this is. This looks cool. I'm going to buy it. So that's a nice thing, I think, for everyone, right? Because I don't think anyone, the idea of striking out every Saturday morning, that's not a thing that we want to do.
The average person's not going to do that. Right. They're going to try. They're going to see that they can't get it, or they're going to go on a random day and see that it's sold out and be like, nah, I'm just going to get something else.
Exactly. So it's nice to have these things available so people can just go to the stores themselves and say, oh, I like this. I'm going to get it.
Yeah, and I know Yeezy is its own entity, even within Adidas. They have its own team, its own branding, its own marketing, all that good stuff, own production, distribution. But that's where I think Adidas really does a great job, where they recognize that something is like a cultural moment and it's trendy, and they make enough of it that people can get it.
Yeah.
Like, I look at like the Stan Smiths or the Superstar,
Yep.
right?
You can always get those.
You can always get a classic pair. And
I
you
love
can also
that.
get some iterations. And I think that's something that, like, hey, Nike, we love you, but it's okay for people to have your sneakers that are cool. Like, at the end of the day, like, I think they need a little good PR, and they're doing so many amazing things. So I don't want to say that Nike doesn't have good PR, because I don't mean that. I think Nike and Jordan Brand, because they are the number one and the leader, they do so much innovation and development, and they know trends and forecasting so well. But it would be interesting to see if they took almost Adidas's model and were like, you know what? We're going to make a Dunk Low that anyone can get.
Right. That's available. Like, that's always available. Right. A classic.
Right. Or
that's there.
at least like a lot of people can get it. Like, hey, crowdsource, see what people want. Or like a Jordan 1 that just is like a black and white pair, like the Panda colorway, you know, nothing crazy. I would love to know if that was a test. Like, I think that would be really cool to see.
You know, one of the things that we talked about with our last guest, the kid James, you know, he talked about for your mental health, you know, you're not getting these, but if there's something I want, he, like our good friend Sneaker Galactus, you know, shout out to Chad Jones, like, they have relationships with people within the sneaker community, and that's how they're able to get this stuff, right? So that's the other part of it, right? Like, the people who are all on the hype train and whatever, and you get a note, it's like, well, you haven't spent the time to build relationships, right? Because I know for those guys, and not just them, many women too, right? Like, if there's a pair they want, they can most likely get it because of the relationships they have. And that's the part that's important, right? Like, you gotta build those. You gotta build those if you truly care about this stuff.
No, absolutely. And I think, you know, it's been interesting for me because I always like to repay favors too. So I never really ask for much because it depends on the type of pull that people would need. I have access to certain things, certain resources, certain projects, campaigns, but not necessarily inventory, right? So like, to me, it's amazing. And this is what I love about the sneaker culture. People are truly in it. When I posted about the Fragment Sakai's in the blue the other day, I had a few people reach out to me that were like, hey, do you want to use my Nike account? And like, or like, put in your payment info, but do you want to make a play? Because we know that like each time you have a Nike account, it needs a different phone number. Otherwise, your wires are going to get crossed, right? Even my brother was like, if you ever need me to like try for stuff for you. And I was like,
look at that. Wow.
Pigs are flying in New Jersey, let me tell you. And my brother said that, I felt like such a proud big sister. But it's true. It's like the culture rallies together. Like, I'll post about something and I now have people that reach out. They're like, hey, do you want this? Or I know someone who's selling it at retail. Or what about this? Or can you reach out to this person? I'm like, cool. Like, what can I do to help you? Like, let me send you a thank you note, or let me put you on a campaign, or whatever that looks like. So I think, you know, the sneaker community, the way that it has transformed, despite all these things that, like, you know, maybe are less than ideal, to me shows that it's honestly stronger than ever. It's almost like now that it's become a mainstream, the people that are true in it do look out for each other. And I love that about it.
Yeah. And if you guys, you know, listen, we've had some great guests on here who talk about this stuff repeatedly, and like, they let you know. We talk about anotherlane.com, the premier digital marketplace for dope kicks, which sponsors America's favorite segment, Shoe and Tell. Like, that's a platform that if you get on there, like, those are the people you talk to, because they will help you if this is something that matters to you and you really, you know, you really care about that. You know, something else that's coming up today, we talked about Kanye's album dropping. The cover art for Drake's Certified Lover Boy was also... First of all,
your response right now is the perfect response. Well, I keep getting alerts on Twitter and Instagram about it, and I'm like, you're going got time for that right now.
I love the fact that it's Certified Lover. It's fantastic.
Well, I mean, you know that he's been rocking the heart carved in his hair. He had the Nike socks that he did with the hearts on them. I mean, it's only natural that that's a progression following Degrassi, right? Like, Jimmy was a heartbreaker back in the day.
Wheelchair Jimmy.
Degrassi streets.
Shout out to Degrassi, right? Where folks first got their first intro into one Aubrey Graham.
Aubrey Graham, yeah.
Well, we know that he has a collaboration and partnership with Nike, and I know that I got that hoodie, one of the hoodies from that collab. I know the shoe's going to be coming out very soon as well. I don't think I've seen any images of what it might look like. So I have no opinion about if I'm going to try the cop or not. I mean, it depends on what it looks like. And I have not seen anything yet, so maybe I should look that up and see what does that potential shoe look like.
Yeah, I mean, I think like knowing Drake's history with Nike, usually they're classic like monochromatic silhouettes, usually a black style, a white style.
Yep.
I think like when he plays with like the Nocta stuff and the OVO
Mm-hmm.
clothing, like that's where he gets a little playful. Like, when I was in Vegas, I had to go and stop
You
at
did.
the OVO
OVO
store.
store, yeah.
That I've been weirdly like collecting pins. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. They're sitting in a jar, but I like weirdly love pins. So I was like, what is something that I can get in the store that I can't get online? So of course I got my OVO Win Las Vegas t-shirt because I also live in t-shirts. But I think it's even that it's like it's a black base. Everything is pretty simple and streamlined, even when he does play with color, because I'm peeping the Nocta hoodie in the background
You
now.
see it, right?
I see it. It's next to my favorite Bel Air hoodie.
Yeah,
whenever you want me to borrow that again, I got you.
Shouts to that Nocta hoodie. No, well actually that was funny because that was on Sneakers app right when that, and I was like, oh, let me just kind of I thing about hoodies is I love hoodies, so I'm like, all right,
you never have enough.
Right, if it doesn't look crazy, I'm like, oh, this looks nice. I'm gonna rock it. Cool, no problem. But again, when this whole sneaker and apparel collaboration come out in a few weeks, we'll see if I'm into it or not.
If you're a certified lover boy or not,
Shouts to Drake and the OVO fam, the sixth god.
I love it. Well, I'm excited to see what comes out. I mean, I think Nike has tried to recreate the magic of when Kanye was at Nike with artists like Drake, with Khaled. I think they have the Nike family of collaborators, creators is amazing. Sometimes it surprises me too. Like I expect almost the Drake stuff to get more hype than it does, but I think because he's been a partner for so long. But I am intrigued to see what everything's gonna look like.
I'm with you. Just a little bit of quick news. I know among the big brands, Reebok, one of the big things that people have been talking about in the sneaker biz has been Kirby Jean Raymond, right, who is Reebok's new VP of Creative Direction. And I know that a short film came out called Crate Master. I have not seen it yet, but I know that people who really, enjoy him, but also are Reebok fans, really looking forward to this. So I'm excited that Reebok heads have sort of like the first piece of something that he's doing. Obviously, they hope that this is just the appetizer to the main meal, and that that there are some really cool things coming from Reebok in that regard, right? Because that's what a lot of the brands have done. They've sort of tapped these really interesting heads of creative now, because they realize things are shocking. Things are changing, right? Like the world is a lot different place, and it's continuing to evolve. And sneakers are not just a piece of something you put on your foot, right? They're art. And, how can we continue to push the envelope forward? And when you're, a company like Reebok, right? Like, how can you, stand out and differentiate, right? And so I think it'll be interesting to see what is coming down the pike. I'll take a look at Crate Master and probably talk about it on next week's show.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's just, I love all the content that's coming out around sneakers lately. Like the hype on HBO has been super interesting. I've started to dive into that this week, and we can talk maybe more about that next week as well. Just some of our favorites, even some of our former guests and people that we've talked about on the show. I love seeing the cameos and what's been happening. I'm also always curious about like how shows like that are being received by more of the mainstream, right? Like, are people finally getting a glimpse into what it's like? And I think, we were talking before we started today's show about, I went to our former guest, Anthony Donahue's, an event that he was hosting over the weekend for his sister up in the Bronx. And I was talking to a girl there all about sneakers. And she was like, it's so nice to just talk to somebody who like gets it, not just wants to be fascinated with it. And she was like, what should I do? I want to take pictures with my son. And I was like, just put stuff out there. Ask people what they want to see. Do what makes you happy. And we were just talking about different styles and silhouettes and this and that. And it was nice to kind of have that human connection, especially during the pandemic, like when you didn't really have that. And social media has been great. I think like Twitter Spaces, Jazz,
Spotify, Green Room, Clubhouse, all that stuff.
Jazz and Kari and TJ have been doing some amazing stuff in Twitter Spaces specifically. I love seeing all the conversation, but there really is something to be said about being able to talk about this stuff IRL, right? Yeah. And I think that's a piece for me that I'm excited for things to go back to that, hopefully.
Well,
There's a lot to talk about in the culture,
if
aside from Twitter.
if folks behave themselves, we can get to it. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, of course, everyone knows it though, but I should say it, because I did mention Reebok. We do know that Adidas did sell Reebok to Authentic Brands earlier this month. And actually, Reebok took a loss on it. I'm sorry, Adidas took a loss on it, right? Because they bought Reebok for $4 billion and then sold it for about 2.5. So, even if you're not a math whiz, that's selling at a loss, right? But I do wonder again with the new creative director, what is Reebok trying to do? Is there an opportunity for them to sort of revitalize themselves as a brand? We shall see. Time will tell.
I agree. I'm excited.
Well, folks, that is all for today's show. And, we will be back next week. We will have, I'm sure, some more interesting tidbits for you. As I said, I'm going to check out Crate Masters, so I'll do a little quick breakdown of that. And, there's obviously going to be something's going to happen between now and next week, as it always does.
Absolutely.
And as always, you know where to find us. We are part of the Count the Dings family. You can get us with the original Bomb Show, Crazy Sexy Cool, Growing Up the Same, the Rap Name Podcast, Woke Bros. I mean, it's just all the shows and us. And of course, we are at Kicks and Shit Show on all social media platforms. Until next time, peace.